Good morning, everybody. My name is Lex Heron, and I'm your facilitator today. Welcome to you in the sanctuary here today, and welcome to our friends on Zoom. Give you a little bit of exercise for those who are able. How about standing up, waving to our friends on Zoom, and also greeting your fellow worshipers this morning. I did want to announce that yesterday I attended, as some of you also did, the memorial service for David Kallstrom. And it was a very moving service, and it was nice to be here to have a final say goodbye to David. Our chalice lighting today is "We gather this hour as a people of faith." It's number 448 in the gray hymnal, if you'd like to read along. It was written by the Reverend Christine Robinson, who was the minister emerita of the First Unitarian Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Each week in our community, we make time to share parts of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters, and we can share our sorrows with one another today, knowing that sorrows come into each other's lives, hopefully periodically, so that together, by doing this, we can comfort each other. We also share our joys with one another, knowing too that joys come into our lives, hopefully often, and that then together we can raise up our voices in celebration. However, not everything, joy or sorrow, can be shared. Some must be shared eye to eye or held in the heart. We recognize that some do not have voices with which to speak the depth of their pain or the height of their celebration. We make time each week knowing that life and experience of every person matters, and together our lights shine brighter. Our community is like a bowl that holds all our lives. The joys and sorrow which affect each person's life sends ripples through all our lives. Today, in recognition of the joys and sorrows, I will drop stones into the water here. And the ripples that occur reflect the sharing of these joys and sorrows, which make the joys more poignant and the sorrows more able to be held. I'll read the sorrows and joys. This is from Teresa Longmore. This is positive thoughts to help my strength during her dad's passing. From Richard Spencer. MSNBC, I don't know what that is. What is it? Thank you. Is reporting about a mass shooting that occurred overnight at an LGBT nightclub in Colorado Springs. At last report, 5 people have been killed and 18 others wounded. The 22-year-old suspect is in custody. That's the 2 sorrows today.
Here's another one.
Thank you, Gary. This is Denise Lott, a joy and a sorrow. Her father is terminally ill and would appreciate thoughts for her family. I will drop some more stones in the water for those joys and sorrows that have not been spoken, and for those of the rest of the world that we live in. Our reading today is Come, Come, Whoever You Are. It was written by the Reverend Ian W. Riddell, who lives in San Diego and is a former assistant minister of Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. He's a former minister of music and worship arts at First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego and the former minister of the UU Congregation of Las Vegas. Come, come, whoever you are. Do you hear that voice calling us? That voice that calls us together here today in this room, made holy by our presence and by the sacred breath we share in our singing, speaking, and silence. That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone and that we are inextricably linked to all other life, woven into a vast tapestry of existence of which we're a powerful, integral, and holy part. And just as we have been called here today, we act as the voice, the heart, the hands of another call, the call to walk with the wanderers, to sing and dance with the worshipers, to proclaim the memory of those who have taken their leave from us, perhaps too early. To wrap the despairing and the broken in the arms of love and community, and to hold the hands of all of us who have broken our vows and call us back again and again to the covenant and work of justice, humility, and steadfast faithfulness. For this, we are here today together. So, my friends, come yet again and let us hear today's sermon together. And it's titled, Hospitality, Join Me at the Table, by the Reverend Sandra Jean, who, if you've read the newsletter, you will know that she was born and raised in Colorado and returned last year to live in her birthplace, Durango. Durango is a beautiful city. If you don't like snow or cold, you wouldn't want to be there now or the next few months. She has been an ordained minister at the Center for Spiritual Learning since October 1989 and retiring from active ministry in 2010. Before her recent move, she lived for 21 years here in Palominas. So welcome, Reverend Sandra Jean. Please share with us now hospitality and join me at the table.
Yeah, I might take those. Take them with you, please. Good morning. Oh my gosh. Before we do anything, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I'm really grateful to be with you here today. Yes, I lived 21 years in Palominas, but I lived about 35 years between Bisbee and then Palominas. And, you know, I loved my life here. I didn't even know I lived in stress when I was 100% solar, and I was on a well, and I lived either 20 minutes to Sierra Vista or 15 to Bisbee until I got to Durango. And I was living for 4 months in the upstairs, the third floor of my cousin's Victorian home with the cats, and it was like I could breathe. It was like I was weightless. That'll never really happen, but that's kind of what it was like. And I'm thinking, wow, I had never really retired. This is what it's like. So moving there has been a real wonderful, I grew up as an only child, and so it's been delightful to be with family. I have a cousin there who's a year and a half older than I am. She's shorter than I am. And we act like two crazy little 80-some-odd-year-olds. We laugh, we talk, we share our expertise. She is a divine cook, and she does woodworking, and she has a garden as big as this room. And then I share my expertise. Let me see, what is that? I cook. And I have been teaching her what little I know about the cell phone. We laugh and we cry because we have 80-some-odd years together. I also have an adult daughter who is 50 that I didn't know before my condo was going to live a half a mile from me. Then I have 2 adult grands, a son and daughter, and their spouses. So that probably I was glad a lot of times that I was an only child, but there's a sense of that connection that everybody around you seems to have because they have them, whether they love them or like them or not. What I noticed that I like, well, one of the things I like the most that kind of fits into what we do here is that Joanne and I are on complete opposites of the spectrum when it comes to religion. And because my denomination is considered New Thought or metaphysical, and on politics. Now, politics, some things, if it was so bad in her mind, she might say one sentence. Now, I know this might ruffle your feathers or walk on your toes, something like that, and she says it and it's done. Or when it's religion, we get to talk about, because we both have a concept of a beingness that we share in our livingness. And so we're always talking about how we saw that today or how we saw it here or there. What is so wonderful about that is that difference that is in our mind doesn't have any implications. It doesn't have any, it does not define our relationship. And so in my mind, when I get to live that every day with somebody so special, I call forth that maybe that could happen between friends and other people in our world, that their idea of what religion is about and their idea of politics would not define their relationships with anybody. And that really wasn't a political statement, so I can say that here, right? Okay. Oh my gosh, when Reverend Tina gave me hospitality as the theme, I thought, okay. And I have been mulling this around in my mind, 3 months ago? And trying to think how I could give you a nugget or a gemstone to take home and maybe call on in your life, in your interactions, in your world. looking at hospitality is whether we share a physical table or not. It's that mental, emotional table. It's that table like Joanne and I have. That it gives us a place to connect, but it doesn't necessarily define how we relationship with each other. When my father was the owner of and worked in his own mine, this was in Silverton, Colorado. And then later when the metals market died, he shifted to tunnel construction and excavation, either for highways and water. And the highlight of his year was the mining convention. And this was in Colorado, so he would travel to Denver, and he would be so excited he could hardly wait to get there and see all his cronies. And very rarely, I'm sure, did he attend anything that was really informative about the latest in mining or anything else. He probably could have written those. No, what he went for was the hospitality suites. You know, anybody that sold equipment or explosives or anything to do with mining and later tunnel excavation, their salespeople were there. And that company had this hospitality suite. Now, when you went to that hospitality suite, you went there to maybe ask questions about the equipment. Or you networked with the cronies in the tunnel business. Sometimes maybe you met somebody new. But there was always food and drink. I think in my dad's case, that's probably what he really went for, was to be able to imbibe with his cronies in a place that had to do with their work. Then the other realm of hospitality that I saw growing up as a child is I came from Polish heritage and Italian heritage. And they had one thread in common. That thread was that when anybody came to the door, maybe even a salesperson, I'm not sure, they came to the door, and if they let you cross, they invited you across the threshold, they didn't even let you sit down before they offered you something to drink or eat, or both. That was part of their unspoken vocabulary. The action was hospitable. And conversely, if we went somewhere that probably wasn't from a heritage that automatically did that, we always wondered what we did wrong. Did they really want us there? Why didn't they offer us anything? So either it appeared that hospitality was being extended or maybe withheld. Who knows? If you really didn't like somebody and they came and you hadn't gotten it across to them, that was the way to do it. You didn't offer them any of the goodies in the house. So, dropping the tidbits that I want to try and make some kind of sense out of hospitality into a basket that we're going to peruse this morning. We're going to look at it in a church community or a spiritual context. And so there's quite a bit to chew on, and I hopefully digest. And we're going to scrutinize it in three ways, I think. Is hospitality the main dish? Where does hospitality originate? And how does hospitality enhance life? So, as we wake up in the morning and before we go to bed tonight, is hospitality the main dish? In my mind, hospitality isn't out there. Hospitality lives in here. It's a place we function from, which I will explore a little more. Now, when my dad went to the mining convention, the hospitality suites were the main dish, the main attraction. But that's because of interaction and seeing people, and they are part of your extended community. He'd usually go all 3 days, too. He didn't just go one. It provided anticipation and motivation to get up, get out of the house, head down into the heart of Denver, and if we didn't live there and we lived somewhere else, to have a hotel room. It included talking and laughing and joking. And then the eating and the drinking. When my ethnic cultures hosted or were hosted in the homes of others, food and drink weren't the main dish, but that element went hand in hand with the visit. I mean, it was like a piece of furniture in the room, or it was like the front door opening. It was also coupled with anticipation, or it could be anxiety if the person you were visiting wasn't a very good cook. There was assurance that we were welcome in their home, actually, that we were welcome in their heart, in their beingness. And because they opened the door, we were being asked to come in and join them at either the physical table or that mental, emotional community table. When we, you and I, are involved in being hospitable, we're making a difference in the lives of the individuals that are on the receiving end of that action. It forms a bond. It maybe brings about a sort of an alliance with another person. Every time hospitality between two or more people takes place, then community expands and deepens. The table becomes a place where love, joy, trust, camaraderie, and laughter are exchanged. It could be a place where we share our sorrows and our sufferings. Even those offering the hospitality notice changes taking place in their own lives. You cannot extend yourself without leaving room for your own life to change and grow. So where does hospitality originate? It isn't because of a culture like my Italians and my Polish. Hospitality is born at the moment we are. It's embedded in that soul of us, that deepest part of us. We may not even recognize it at that young age or know it by the label hospitality. And we may not consciously know how to use it at the young age. Except when little kids are playing house, don't they always have people come and they share the teapot with them? And cookies, if mom let them have them. They start practicing that when they see it all around them. It triggers that and lets it come to the surface. Those of you who are actively involved in any kind of social justice are using this attribute. The caring, giving nature of who you are is reaching out to those, say, on the border, where they've come here from a place where they've been disenfranchised, and they're looking for a safer, better life. And we won't go any further than that. They're looking for that, and those of us who may greet them at the border or try to alleviate the suffering there, that hospitality word is the name for what we're doing. The table is within us, and we're inviting them into that room by extending a hand or food or a soft voice or a caring nature. Those of us who are involved in food banks or clothing and toy collections at this time of the year, that is hospitality that's been triggered. The table is community, is those of us that recognize there's a plight that needs to be addressed. The hospitality gene is surfacing to bring you to those in need and most likely, again, disenfranchised. Hospitality could be not what we're doing. It could be one of our names. It's that close to being about us. It would be like a necklace. It could be, a lot of people have 3 names. They have Sandra Jean Janetto. I'm not Janetto anymore, but anyway, the middle name is Jean. And some people go by that middle name because they didn't like that first one. Actually, in my life, last names were what I had a lot of. My kids used to love to recite the list. Sandra Jean, Janetto, Hoover, Janetto, Jones, Oberg, Jean. I went to my middle name for my last name. Hospitality is more than a name, more than a label. It's a way of being. It's a way of doing. It's a way of expressing. It exudes caring, going beyond daily tasks. It's inviting and it's serving. It's a way to connect beyond words, beyond ego, beyond judgment. It's beyond politics, ethnicity, hard word there, skin color, accent. Any dimension that could be a dividing factor. Hospitality fills in the cracks of life. It's energy. When older people, older than anybody here, okay? When older people don't participate in life anymore, the energy of hospitality becomes stagnant and blocked. Because if it's who we are and how we emanate, it becomes blocked and stagnant. The reciprocity of energy is circumvented. Without giving, the avenue of receiving is no longer part of their cycle. The energy of hospitality is a glue that keeps it all together, that screams to be let out to do its special work. That's why it's so meaningful in any way to touch those individuals that no longer want to get up and get dressed or get in the car or go on the bus or call somebody to take them somewhere. So what we do in our lives serves them immensely, not just because they're old, because we want to help get that energy moving in their mind and their spirit, not just their body. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is this. Hospitality cannot cannot do its work without human specimens to host it, to give it a place to move through, to give it an avenue or a vessel for it to project its energy and power. We are very important in life around us. And how does hospitality then enhance our life if we're doing all of these things? This came from, I'm supposed to give credit, and I couldn't even tell for sure on this wonderful Google stuff that came to me, but from www.blogshopjackie.com. You will probably never care. It was, what is the virtue of hospitality? Hospitality is an important virtue, it says. We prefer not to be bothered by or to bother others. Hospitality requires us to accept others when they come into our lives, whether or not we like them or what they do. That's what Joanne and I do. Oh my goodness. No wonderful our relationship is. See, hospitality is like Velcro. It attracts other energy like it to en masse to a community. It builds on itself. It invites others who are also conscious vessels of its expression. The expression, come to the table. If and when you question your motives, your steps, where you've come from or where you're going, if you are enough, if you have a place in the larger scheme of things, then your chair at the table is empty. Life is bigger, richer, more meaningful when hospitality is alive and well. There are place cards at the table called life. And yours and mine are always there in the greater scheme. Just because we aren't making space for hospitality to emerge, the place card is there, even if the chair is empty, waiting for us to recognize the call. Hospitality enlarges our own life when we take care of ourselves. Got to add this in here. When we take care of ourselves with time boundaries and energy boundaries so that we are fully whole. Mentally, physically, and emotionally, so we can be fully present in everything we do. We might consider putting ourselves first in at least one area of our lives. That could be having to do with the arts or music or reading a book. I still have one thing I've carried along with me from ministry, and I was part of bringing together a committee in my denomination to keep retirees at least in their own light. Instead of when they retire, you may never hear from them again unless you go to something and you say, so where's so-and-so? What are they doing now? And that's as far as anything ever goes, and it's in a lot of denominations. You've done your work, you've served your best, and you're hung out on the clothesline so the wind can whip you around after you retire. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I'm glad I'm coming to an end of being a part of the formation of that. Because what I notice in being retired, I don't want to have monthly meetings. I don't want to be the scribe. I don't want to type them up. And I still have 2 more months of doing that. I kept saying, if I want to sit down and read all afternoon, I don't want to have it hanging over my head. No, you better do those minutes first, or they won't get done, or they'll be calling you for them the Saturday before the Monday meeting. Hospitality is taking care of the place where it is, where it emanates from. I watch Tina and some of our other minister colleagues, and I don't know how they do all they do for you. I don't know how they're able to move those lines about time boundaries and about energy boundaries. They're like the rabbit, they just keep going, don't they? Hospitality is when you know of a place that you can assist in that. Do it. So I'd like to share a story of hospitality with you, entitled Tea and Sympathy. It was from the American Journal of Nursing. Actually, then it was through Reader's Digest many years ago. And the author is Hannah, H-A-N-N-E, Dina Bernstein, an R.N. A small, emaciated man lay in the bed, his pale figure disappearing into the white sheets. He had undergone a bone marrow transplant for leukemia. The author tiptoed in. "Hello, Mr. Jensen. I'm Hannah, your nurse." He nodded, closed his eyes. She went about her business. She checked his vital signs. "Would you like some soup?" she asked. He shook his head. "I just want to sleep." So she came back later with his medication. Grimacing, he took it, and then he sank back again against the pillow. She offered him the paper, but he wasn't interested. Oh, if it was this day and age, I wouldn't be either. Feeling defeated, she left his room. She couldn't be hospitable to him. So in the kitchen, she was about to pour herself a cup of tea when she paused and she grabbed a large teapot. And she placed the teapot and toast and a couple of cups on a tray and headed off for his room. "Would I be disturbing you if I have my tea in your room?" she asked. "I'd like to watch the news." "Not at all," he says. But he was taken aback. He closed his eyes. So she put the TV on, and she, out of the corner of her eye, noticed him watching, probably listening to the news. And she said, "I brought an extra cup if you'd like some tea. Maybe I'll have half a cup." They watched in silence until she noticed him nodding off. As she left, he asked, "Are you in tomorrow?" She smiled and said, "I am, and I'll have tea with you again if you like." "I'd like that." The next night, he had 2 cups of tea and a piece of toast, the first solid food in a month. The third night, he told her about his wife, children, and his job as a manager of a supermarket. He lived far from the hospital, so his family hadn't been able to come visit. His town was near where Hannah grew up. On the 4th night, he got out of bed and sat in a chair. And a few days later, his bed was empty. He'd recovered enough to spend his recuperation time closer to home. Now, 4 months later, Hannah went to visit her parents. Remember, they lived close to him. She was out shopping when she heard a booming voice, kind of like Lex this morning. "Hannah, it's so good to see you." She almost didn't recognize Mr. Jensen, the patient. He gave her a great big hug. "This is Hannah," he said, introducing her to his wife. "She saved my life with a cup of tea." So to summarize, is hospitality the main dish? Hospitality is interaction between us and those around us and with ourselves. We sense when there is a need or a call to action. It can be between us and family, friends, or assisting those in acts of social justice, or through our jobs and our work, our volunteerism. It may not be the main dish, but it cannot be separated from any who come to the table. And where does hospitality originate? Hospitality is part of the fiber of our being. It's more than a label. It isn't something we conjure up, but we give it a place to pour out. Hospitality can do nothing of itself. It needs human beings as a means of moving out into the world and making a difference in the world. And how does hospitality enhance life? Anything that is given is multiplied to overflowing. That is not a word in that big book. That is scientifically proven that when you create a vacuum, it's filled up to overflowing with like energy. It enlarges the person giving space for it to flow. It creates community and brings strength and empowerment to the individual and to the masses. And in conclusion, I would like you to join me. We get to go back into the silence again. Only I'm going to blab a little while we're there. I want to make sure I don't take anybody's papers when I leave here. So please join me. We come to the table in our hearts, our minds, the life that animates our being. And when we do that, we are enlivened with places to be the touch person, the torch bearer, the person who guides and lifts and cares and shares. Now, in that place, we don't always have a word like hospitality to cover what we're doing. I believe in a special order in this universe, and each one of us is a part of that order, and we sooner or later wake up to our place in that order. And I know that fully and freely, each one of us, young or older, frees ourselves up to allow that energy called hospitality to flow in and through us, enhancing our individual world and the world at large, making a difference, making a place. And in doing that, we call it good, and so very good. And we let it be so. And so it is.
I must say with Reverend Sandra's words here at the first part, being a a mining engineer in my former life and attending a whole bunch of receptions, it hit home. Our closing words for today are, "If here you have found freedom." This is by the Reverend Lorelei Bellamy. It's reading number 692 in our grey hymnals if you want to read along. The Reverend Laurelyn Bellamy is a UU minister who lives in Georgia and last served in active ministry 2000 and 2008 as staff chaplain at the Atlanta VA Medical Center. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you are or have known love, give back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace, go in love.
Extinguish this or do I
You can extinguish it now. You can extinguish it now. Thank you, David.
Hello, Sandra Jean. Well, thank you so much for coming. Love your message. Love to hear you.
And life is good, right?